is a theme that's been part of films and TV shows for generations, as items like Doctor Who's TARDIS and Back to the Future's DeLorean car have shown us the idea of time travel.
Well, now, one man says he's trying to take fiction and turn it into reality, as Professor Ronald Mallett is attempting to build his own time machine, or at least understand the principles. He joins us now from Connecticut. Good morning to you. It's lovely to talk to you. We'll start, if you don't mind, I'll start a little bit with your CV so that everybody knows before we even begin this that you do have some serious credentials here. Joined the US Air Force, enrolled at Pennsylvania State University, became one of the first African Americans to receive a PhD in physics, specialising in Einstein's theory of relativity. Now the Professor of Physics at the University of Connecticut since 2013. You have great credentials, although I've got to say the American clocks went forward last night an hour and you turned up for this interview an hour early. So, you know...
Unless you time travel,
we haven't quite cracked the time travelling yet. It's lovely to talk to you, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. And it was your father that instilled this love of science.
Yes, thank you. Everything for me began with my father. He was a television repairman in New York. I was the oldest of 4 children, and for me, the sun rose and set on him. I mean, he was just wonderful. He loved having a family, and he, in fact, was trying to get me to groom me to become interested in his work, and he gave me scientific toys like a crystal radio set and a gyroscope, and he would try to explain to me scientific principles, and I had to go through the multiplication table to get my weekly allowance. He looked like he was extremely healthy. He was a very robust-looking man. We didn't know that he had a weak heart, and he died suddenly of a massive heart attack when he was only 33 years old. And I was 10 years old at the time, and it devastated me. My world just simply came apart after that. I went from being a happy kid to a very depressed kid. But I loved to read. That was another gift that he left me. And about a year after he died, when I was 11, I came across the book that changed my life. It was H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, an classics illustrated version. The thing is that it said on the first page that scientific people know very well that time is just a kind of space, and we can move forward and backward in time as we can in space. That was like a life preserver to me, because I thought, if I could go back in time, I could see him again and save his life. And I even tried to put something together with the old television radio parts that he left behind, and bicycle parts, and of course nothing worked. But I remembered it said scientific people know very well. Now, I wasn't exactly sure about what that meant, but later, when I was about 12, I came across a paperback which had a picture of Einstein on the cover next to a large hourglass. Now, I knew that Einstein was this great genius. I didn't know what he did, but the thing is he was standing next to an hourglass, so I thought maybe this meant that Einstein had something to do with time. And even though it was a popular level book, I didn't have the background to understand everything, but it did say that unlike the classical physics of Newton, where nothing can change time in Newton's theory, according to Einstein, there were things that can alter time. So I knew Einstein was going to play a key role in my understanding the possibility of building a time machine. And so I knew I was going to have to learn a lot. And I should just mention, it was important that after my father died, we plunged into poverty. It was very hard for my mother. I don't know how she did it. So I actually, after I graduated from high school, I went into the Air Force during the Vietnam War period, and I used the GI Bill to go to Penn State. And as you mentioned, I got my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in physics, specializing in Einstein's theory. According to Einstein's...
Ronald, the breakthrough for you, the principle here, because if you had managed to go back and build your time machine out the telly, and you go back to the time you saved your father. If you'd saved your father, then he wouldn't have died, and then you would never have read the book, and you would never have invented the time machine. So all of these things, you know, it messes with our heads.
Space-time continuum.
But but well done.
Thank you.
The thing is that you're right. I mean,
how can we do it? How will it work?
Okay, well, the thing is that, let me tell you, it's based on Einstein's, in fact, the real scientific possibility is based on Einstein's work. Einstein developed 2 theories. One in 1905 was called the special theory of relativity. And in a nutshell, it says that time is affected by speed. The faster you move, the more clocks slow down. And your heart is a clock, for instance, and that would mean that it would slow down. You would notice it, but people would notice that you weren't aging at the same rate. We have verified that. In fact, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, whenever they turn it on, they're able to get subatomic particles to live longer by speeding them up close to the speed of light. So we do know that. And effectively, since they age less, that means that they're going into the future. So we know that time travel in the future is actually experimentally pushed.
That is fascinating. Can I ask you then, if this at the moment is just a theory, I mean, this is a theory, and like you're saying there, the proof is there. Is it a case of getting the funding and getting the ball rolling and sort of creating this machine that in theory could work?
For traveling back into the past, yes, as I said, we can go into the future with speed. We can't do that. Go into the past, though. Einstein's special theory of relativity only allows us to go in one direction. Einstein's general theory of relativity is a whole nother thing. It says that time is affected by gravity. What Einstein meant is that the stronger gravity is, the more time slows down. Now, what I have to do is I have to tell you that this is necessary to understand what Einstein's general theory of relativity before we can go into what I did, okay? According to Newton, if we have, and I'm going to represent this by a simple example. Suppose this represents the sun, okay? And suppose that this represents the earth. Now, according to Newton, there's a force called gravity, which keeps the earth in orbit around the sun. But we don't really know what that force is, okay? He was able to describe it mathematically, but we don't know what it is. Einstein was able to tell us what gravity is. Now, every time I talk about theory and an idea, I have to keep mentioning the fact that in physics, he was a theoretical physicist. He used equations. So whenever a physicist says they came up with an idea, it doesn't mean in the colloquial sense. It means that they have developed a mathematical system.
Just for us, Ronald, I'm so sorry to interrupt because we are quite limited for time, and it is so fascinating. But the trouble is that both Holly and I are useless at maths, and the worst thing for me was physics. So I can't do the deep stuff. Mine is a little bit more. I suppose it's superficial. That if we can go forward in time, that's the end of lotteries and gambling and anything, and because you'll know what's going to happen, and then you come back and then you bet on it. We'll never, ever, in the whole of time, be able to go... We'll never be able to go back in time, because if someone in the future could go back in time, there would have been no Hitler and there wouldn't be Putin. So, how is it possible?
No, it's a little bit more... No, it's a little bit more subtle than that. The thing is that we can go back in time based on Einstein's general theory of relativity. It just simply means that the time that you change may not be the timeline that you're on. That's a whole different theory. That has to do with what's known as quantum theory. I should mention that there's a physicist in England who, in fact, looked at the possibility of what happens if you go back in time, okay? And his name is David Deutsch. He's in Oxford University. And what he said is that you can go back into the past, but what you end up is in the past of a parallel universe. In that universe, for example, you could do something like, if you wanted to get rid of Hitler, but it wouldn't change the universe that you came from, but it would change that alternate universe. So
in theory,
this notion
nice
of parallel
idea,
universes...
but it's not going to work, Phil. Listen, it's utterly fascinating. It is complex. It's not quite as simple as getting into a DeLorean.
You need billions of dollars. You need loads of time, obviously, to get there.
But it's the beginning. This is just the beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronald.
Good to talk to you today.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right.
How much of that did you understand?
That it's not as easy as
it's not that easy.
Think.
Otherwise, we'd all have been doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I knew as soon as I saw that equation, I thought, I'm done.
Leave it up to Dr. Who.
I'm done.
I think is best.